There we go. All right. So again, oh, I've got Cindy back in. Go ahead and let her in. Cool. There we go. All right. So again, welcome. We're really excited to have you all here today. Today, we're going to be really focusing on learning tips and tools for pulling content together in an engaging way and gathering feedback. So as we have in the last few workshops, we like to honor the collaborators who helped us develop these workshops that we're in today. So I'll hand it over to Joe to open up the session with a quote.
Before I get started, guys, I'd like to welcome everyone back. It's good to see everyone's faces, and I'm excited for workshop 3. So Levi Brown, is someone that's really inspired us, as we've shared before in previous sessions. And he made this quote, and we'd really like to share it with you. So when developing a civics course, you have to touch on the social, the cultural, the structural, and the historical part of it, all rolled into a big package. If you do that, your people will start to come together. There's a lot of power and strength in that saying. And as you move forward with the development of your project, you'll see that.
Great, Joe. All right, so now I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be doing today. You all should have received this in your email, but we'll go over it again just so you're aware of what we're covering. After our welcome and opening today, we'll do a fun little kinship building activity. We love those to get to know each other a little deeper. And then we'll go into our first content section, which is focused on sharing knowledge. We understand that you all are professionals and have experience putting on programs and events, maybe even courses together and engaging folks. So my presentations will be brief, and we'll try and have some conversations just to get some ideas flowing of how you may want to do things, maybe a little bit differently for this kind of workshop, since it's more community focused than maybe the educational institutions or students that you may have worked with before. Then after that, we'll go into materials and resources. Last workshop, we really dove deep into kind of listing out all the different tools that you can use. So today we'll spend a little bit of time actually in those tools, showing you how they work and the different ways that you can use them. Then at 2:10, we'll have a 10-minute health break where you'll be able to get up and stretch, and then we'll lead into reflection and evaluating impact. Again, giving the programming experience that you all have, you probably do have experience with evaluation. So we'll be able to have some good discussions and conversations about ways we might indigenize our evaluation methods, and also just the importance of kind of that continuous feedback and input for these workshops. And then after that, y'all have about 45 minutes of kind of a free time for your group to get together and talk about what needs to be done. As you know, in our fourth workshop, you all will be providing about a 25-minute presentation about a rough draft of what your plan for your Tribal Civics project will be. So this 45 minutes will really be led by you all. Joe and I will be there to take notes for you, provide feedback and input, and remind you of kind of the work that you've laid out in the previous workshops as well. So we'll go over to those guidelines for the presentation so you know how to prepare. And then we'll get to that at 2:55. We'll go into our final health break of the day at 3:40 before we wrap up with our closing and next steps. So with that, we always just like to review our meeting agreements. So these are kind of the same that they've been since the first workshop, but we always like to give folks an opportunity to remember what we discussed back in workshop 1, and also provide any input if there's something that needs to be changed or added. Because so much of today's workshop will be brainstorming and sharing together, we'd really love to see your faces and keeping those cameras on. And you're also welcome to use the chat to engage and share as well if you didn't want to come off mute. So I'll just pause here and see if there's any new additions that folks have for our meeting agreements. Okay, hearing some head shaking of no's. Okay, well, hearing silence, I'll assume that we still love these, and that's great. So we can keep moving forward into a little bit of fun. So we'll do our kinship building with Joe.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so today's activity, we're going to take 15 minutes. And I'd like to give everyone 5 minutes to find an object nearby that brings you peace, joy, or grounding. It could be something on your desk and that you can't work without. Once you find that, we'll go around the group and we'll have a share out, and you'll be able to tell us why you chose those items. And so 5 minutes. If we don't need that 5 minutes, we can definitely move beyond that.
from the eagles traveling the waterways of our ancestors' rivers of time. Cypress, cedar, and pine, painted paddles in our hands, pouring through this sacred land, water, song, spirit, and rhythm align. Blessings as we look to our Father Sky, seeing the eagle lift our oars up high. In Thanksgiving protocol, we ask permission to dip way down the mother's lifeblood will flow through her sacred ground. My people, my land, my people, my land. This is the way that life was given, the way we were made to stand. My people, my land, my people, my land. Honor all creations, reverence for this way of life. Greetings as we feel the sun's warmth, sparkling diamonds, waves splash abundant light, sacred light and sound, copper, wampum, and pearls, gather precious treasures of our world, trade splendor design, and together we thrive. My people, my land, my people, my land. This is the way that life was given, the way we were made to stand. My people, my land, my people, my land.
All right, time is up. And just for everyone to have an example, I'm going to call on Michelle first. Michelle, are you ready to share?
I am ready. Okay, so for items that bring me peace, joy, and grounding, I have Mother's Day gifts from a couple of years ago. My kids had the same preschool teacher, and they're a year and a half apart, so similar craft, two different kids. So it's got their little picture on it, and they drew artwork on the vase. So it's just a really cute way to have a forever flower on my desk, to remind me of kind of why I'm doing the work that I'm doing. And then something that I cannot work without is actually my wireless mouse. I have tried to go work in coffee shops without using a mouse, just thinking I could use my trackpad. And I am just, oh, there's our timer. And I just cannot do it without the mouse anymore. So this is definitely something that I pack with me now anytime I work away from my desk.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for leading us off. And I will follow up with that. So normally my children are in school right now, and I would have their stuffed animals on my desk because every day they leave for school, they bring their stuffed animals. One is a sheep and one is a Beanie Boo. And so they would be sitting here normally, but my kids are homesick and they have been for the last 2 weeks. So I don't have that to share with you about bringing joy. One thing that I can't work without, these are my value cards from NGC. It keeps me grounded in my work and really helps me understand and realize the importance of the work I'm doing. Centering indigeneity, being a good relative, practice humility, embracing fun unapologetically, and honoring sovereignty. Our values within the organization, and I use those to really guide me and ground me. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer to go next?
If you don't mind, I'll go first. Then I can pick on the next one to go next.
That's a great idea, Bill.
Okay. Well, the rest of the team knows me too well. And I really struggled on this one because they kind of both go in the same area. So it says, what brings you peace, joy, and grounding? This is my protein bars that everyone knows that I love. And so I didn't know if that was that, or if that was what I can't work without, or my daughter made these. These are coasters, and I play pickleball, and I just thought she made me a set of 4 of them. So it could go either way. And, since we have a new kid on the block this time, Cindy, I think I'm going to jump over to Cindy and make her go next.
Thanks, Bill. Hello, everybody. Cindy Milda, Shakpe, Mide, Wakantuan, Dakota, or Sioux community. So I'm not at work today. I'm at home. But because Bill is going to pick on me and he doesn't give me a day off, my favorite spot and my peace and joy and grounding is oh, you can't see it because I'm like have a filter on. So it is here you go. So it is my sewing machine. That is my peace and joy. This room is my peace and joy. I don't, at work, what can I peace, joy, and grounding? Nothing. Maybe Bill, I don't know. Yeah, that's me.
Who would you like to go next, Cindy?
Oh, who I'll have go next? Let's pick on Kellen.
Cindy, I knew you were going to be next. I felt it inside. So my 2 things that I picked, one kind of just brings me peace and joy. I got this adorable little sweetgrass turtle a couple years ago at a land event. And it's just something, the kids kind of love too. I love too. There's just something that has a really great energy about it. And then also that can't work without either that peace and joy. I have this great little folder of pictures from like the first year I started of the kids. And it's always fun. The kids and I love to look at these and how much they've grown and changed over the years. I've been here for a while. So some of them are in elementary school that are about in these photos and are about to graduate now. So it's always fun to just look back at those and, obviously can't do my work without the kids either. So it's kind of a symbolic thing too. I'm going to pick on Dan to go next.
Hi, everybody. So you're catching me a little unawares about the office or the desk because I'm still growing into my space. And I had some visitors the other day and I kind of cleaned off everything in my space. But fortunately, I do have 2 things that I would say both keep me grounded and bring me joy. And they're very basic and similar to Bill's in that I have these bars, these Go Macro bars that I have pretty much every day, and coffee. And I need these things at the beginning of the day to make sure I am fueled up and ready to go. And these bars in particular match all of the nutritional and ingredients requirements that have been imposed upon me and my family. So it's important that I do that too, in solidarity with everything that we do at home as far as food, and gets me ready for the day every day. So those are the things that I have. And as I grow into the office, I'll have a lot more things related to photos and family and things like that too. And let's see, I will pick on, let's see who else is out there. Lisa, I think you're still out there.
Yep, I am. So I'm gonna work backwards. So I am actually remote today, but everywhere I go, I have multiple mice or mouse for my computer because I have to have my mouse when I have my laptop. So that's a have to. And I always have my phone on me, and I enjoy my phone because I have lots of pictures of my 3-year-old grandson on my phone. So whenever, and I get all these kind of alerts every day about memories and just being able to see him through the years. And so just picking up my phone and looking at him periodically through the day really kind of like settles me and brings me a lot of peace. Let's see who's next. I think it's Ashley.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, no camera today. I'm at home. But I have for things that bring me peace and joy, I have a stone that I found in Lake Superior that actually has a perfect groove for your thumb, like a rubbing sort of tension relieving thing. So that's cool. I like that. And things I can't work without is definitely my coffee. So much coffee. And then I think Carissa.
All right, my turn. Sorry I was late. I was having a lot of tech issues. So an object nearby that brings me peace, joy, and grounding. I have this little collage of my family. There's my kids. You can't really see. Here's my great grandpa, my great grandma, and then my great great grandma and grandpa. I just have this on my desk to remind me of the work I do and why I do it. Just really grounding in the fact that none of this would have been in existence without them and their hard work. So I try to do right by them every day. And then something that I cannot work without is coffee. If you know me, I drink copious amounts of espresso, and it's probably really bad for me, but it's my coping mechanism. So that's what I do. So yeah, that is my things. I'm done.
All right, thank you all for sharing. That was definitely a fun activity, and I do have to say I am getting thirsty for coffee now that you guys kept bringing that up. So I might take a break and go grab a cup of coffee in a little bit. It looks like we are just about at time, so we will move ahead to sharing and knowledge, and that will be with Michelle. Thank you.
So thank you again, everybody, for sharing. We love seeing your pictures, and clear to see we have some commonalities. I don't know, Lisa, if you saw Joe holding up 3 different mice as well. So that's just really fun to see. But yes, like Joe said, we're diving into our first content session of the day. So first, we're going to talk about how we want to share the knowledge that you've decided is the most important for your Tribal Civics project. As we know, sharing this knowledge, sharing traditional teachings even, is really good medicine. So we really encourage you all to reflect on and think about the traditional teaching processes of your people when you're deciding to deliver this content. So thinking about things like where and how do knowledge keepers typically share their teachings? Is it in ceremony? Is it just having dinner and cooking with your aunties? It doesn't always have to be something really formal, but just thinking about the different ways that knowledge is typically shared and then trying to incorporate some of those methods into your workshops is a really good way to kind of connect those cultural teachings with the different topics that you're hoping to cover. Again, incorporating those traditional cultural activities and stories is another really great way to engage your participants. I know sometimes a lot of good conversations happen around a beading circle. So that kind of gives you the opportunity to do something with your hands and learn at the same time, which sometimes can help information retain a little bit better too. And then, of course, there is a time and place for lectures, but typically our people learn best by connecting with the material through conversations and activities. So I know that's a bit ironic to say that as I'm doing a lecture right now, but you may have noticed kind of the flow of our workshops is we try to keep presentation sections about 10 minutes or less, and then always have some sort of activity or discussion that relates to the topics, so that folks are really able to engage with that on their own. Another really easy way to engage folks is to think about your location. So this can encourage and engage folks by connecting them with the land or a meaningful location, which is definitely an Indigenous practice. Think of where we're at this time of year, this season, with sugar bush time, getting outdoors, and that can be a way to connect to treaty practices, to cultural activities, to knowledge about the land, the resources that are within your nation. Obviously, I do recognize that most of us are in Minnesota, and Joe's over there in even colder North Dakota. So there are times of years where it's probably not ideal to be sitting outside for 4 hours and doing a workshop. But even if you can take like 10 minutes of your time to do some sort of energizer activity by going outside, sometimes getting that fresh air, especially cold air, can be a really good way of literally waking people up, and also just getting the blood and ideas flowing as well. So getting really creative with how you want to convey the information, and how you can connect that with real world examples within your nation can really help retain and connect your community members and your participants to other resources. So we now have Levi's recipe for success. So you'll find this recipe in the guidebook as well. But these are generally some best practices from our contributors and from Levi that he's found have worked well for him throughout his civics project. So of course, first is varying your content, providing a healthy mix of stories and facts, as well as being able to give participants enough to think about so that they're able to continue these conversations after the workshop. There's no possible way that we can cover everything that folks need to know about being a tribal citizen in, say, 4 hours or a one-day workshop. And so we're really just hoping to spark that engagement, spark that excitement so that folks go home, talk to their families, talk to their friends about these different topics, and get other folks excited as well. If you remember, you all generated a huge list of content ideas and things you wanted to cover. Even just spending time on one item, like we talked about ICWA and workshop 2, could take weeks. So how can you just give folks just enough to inspire and encourage them to dive deeper into those? So another thing to remember is it's also important as much as possible to not focus on contentious issues. Of course, history is really important in a civics course, but there isn't a need to sort of dwell on the history or spend too much time discussing polarizing issues. Again, this is something that your group can decide. And since you are you have the knowledge of your nation, it's important for you to think about which topics would be worthwhile engaging with. But remember, you may have a short amount of time with your audience. So you may want to try and bring folks together. Of course, we don't want to shy away from the hard conversations, but always finding a way to be strengths-based and to be forward-thinking about how we're talking about these hard things, because we're looking for solutions and not just kind of getting stuck in that sort of deficit-based thinking. A good way is to do this is to try and focus on the future as much as possible. As Indigenous folks, we've gone through so many hard things, and we're very quick to talk about that, but it's a lot harder to dream of what the possibilities could be because we don't often give ourselves that time and that space to think about what an Indigenous future is going to look like. So creating that space within your workshops can be a really powerful way to engage and inspire folks in your community. I think especially youth have great ownership and creativity about the future of our nations, and their ideas about what the future could look like can lead to really exciting conversations and actions that can be taken today to inspire the forward thinking and positive outcomes for your nation that we're looking for. It's also important to keep in mind that this is collective work when we're talking about engaging folks civically. We always have to remain community centered and not get sucked into kind of these individual agendas that different folks in the community may want you to focus on. So just always staying with your ear to the community and not being afraid to adjust when necessary. So this can be grounded in the needs of your community as much as possible. Another thing that is so important is to celebrate your wins together. There's so many amazing things going on in our communities, and sometimes we don't spend enough time or take the space and time to really pat each other on the back and celebrate and lift one another up for those things. So by celebrating and lifting up these positive actions in your community, it can be a really great way to strengthen that bond so that when there is a tragedy or when hard things do happen in life, we have these baseline foundational relationships on different positive aspects that you can lean on together. I think when we think about our communities are so strong, when something like a passing away or when kind of funeral happens, we see community members flock to people's houses, providing food and laughter. That community and that kind of support is only possible if you also have those really good times together. So that's a really important aspect. And then, of course, with our agendas, it's always important to be able to listen to participants, but then it's at the same time staying on track and on time with your agenda. Of course, you always need to be flexible. You've seen in our workshops the need to adjust timing. And a lot of our teachings tell us that things happen when they're supposed to happen. So we can't be afraid to adjust our plans, but we also want to be respectful of the time that we kind of need to address everything that you've put in the agenda. This can be challenging at times, especially if you have folks like elders or knowledge keepers in the room. I know I never want to be the one that has to tell a knowledge keeper to kind of wrap it up, to stick to a schedule. So it's important to kind of find those respectful ways to keep folks on task and keep the agenda flowing, and to make sure your agendas reflect the participants and the knowledge that they're sharing. Another thing to focus on, again, are those real stories of success. Again, there are a lot of great things happening in our communities that we don't have to look too far to provide examples from. And it's really just so much more impactful when there are people and last names that the participants are familiar with. We shared that story from Leech Lake, that one woman in her court case that made such a huge impact on Indian gaming. And without hearing Helen's story, folks wouldn't have known that, and for a long time didn't know about the work that Helen Bryan had done on Leech Lake. So again, just celebrating your community members and their successes that have really changed the course of your nation's history. And then lastly, using humor. We know a lot of the topics that you'll be going over in your workshops can be really heavy, can be really legal and tough to talk about just by nature. But so as Indigenous people, one of our greatest strengths is our humor, our ability to be humble and just laugh together. And so as much as you can, kind of incorporating those moments to laugh. Of course, inevitably things are going to go off course. When that may happen, those are just moments that are really authentic that we can connect and laugh about together. So again, utilizing that humor and not taking yourself too seriously as the presenters and facilitators of what may be more challenging topics. So with that, we'll go over to Joe to kind of lead us in a group discussion.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Okay, guys, I know Michelle was talking about me in that last slide where, you're going over time and not sticking on track. I'm so guilty of that in our meetings, and I know she's looking at me specifically when she's saying that. So I'm going to try to stay on track. If I do go over, Michelle, please put me back in line. We're going to take 5 minutes, guys. And what I want you to do is really reflect on your own experiences. And we're going to start with the first question, and we are going to capture your responses in Jamboard. So how have you engaged an audience, participants, and or students? We're going to take 5 minutes to answer this question, and we'll move on from there. Anyone care to volunteer, or should I start calling on people?
Did we want to do some self-reflection time and then come back to the full group?
Yeah, we could absolutely do that too. If you like to take a few minutes and think about these questions and you come back, you can definitely do that way too.
I think Cindy should start.
Because she's new.
Bill, really? how have I engaged in the audience, participants, or students? So a lot of it is once you start speaking, doing your introduction in Dakota, people start paying attention. So that's one way. Or the other way, because I'm a grandma and I get after kids, I just yell. No, no, not really. No, the other way is, just getting the students attention, you know, by saying, hey, can you please listen? Or, that introduction of who I am in Dakota. That's the best way that I have been doing it lately. What made me feel engaged?
Aren't we just doing the first question?
Yeah, we'll just start on we'll stay on the first question and give everyone an opportunity to respond, and then we'll move on to the next. Cindy, thank you though.
Okay.
Anyone else care to share how you've engaged an audience, participants, and/or students?
I can go. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bill. If you'd like to go, go ahead.
No, you take it.
I think you got him just barely.
One thing, granted, I work with youth, but I find this no matter what age I work with, everybody responds well when you make things into games. It's the best way to kind of make those connections in that fun and silly way, like we were talking about before. And, I find even some of those things don't have to be really complicated games, like anything. We used to play this game when I was in, when I taught in middle school. It was called Slap the Pot. And we literally had like a pot that was in the middle, and each person put their hands up and you'd ask a question, and whoever slapped it first got to answer. And, you got a point that way. And we always had like a necessary roughness call. So if somebody was doing it too hard, the other team automatically got 5 points. So, that the kids weren't trying to beat each other as they like to do. So, I think anytime you can just incorporate that simple kind of feeling of it being playful, it makes people engage a lot more with the material.
Thank you, Kellen. Bill, did you want to take a stab at that question?
Well, I kind of want to go on Kellen's point. So I just did a presentation yesterday, and it was for some solid waste people. So it was kind of an interesting group, and I wanted to kind of make sure that we were all on the same level and coming from their perspective. So I tried to understand what their topic was and reached out so that we felt like we were all from the same common level. But I wanted to go back to Cindy because sometimes I see her at the general council meetings, and I always think that like sometimes Cindy comes with very colorful outfits on, and I think like sometimes that is helpful and engaging because people go, oh, that's sort of unique. So I had a two-part.
Thanks, Bill.
That was awesome. Okay, we have time for one more on this question. Would anyone like to share their experience, how you've engaged an audience, participants, and/or students?
I can go. Unless anyone else wants to go.
We could probably get both you and Lisa in
Yeah.
quick if you like. Yeah.
I'll mute.
Lisa, I guess you're gonna go first.
Okay, thank you. So I do ICWA trainings through TTCP, which is through the U of M. And one of the things that I found is really having the participants reflect a lot during the trainings because it is personal, and also allowing them. And I think with COVID, this has really helped because sometimes you're not going to get everyone who's going to participate because you have some introverts in the room, and because you have different modes of having people participate in trainings now where they can use the chat feature, where they don't have to necessarily be verbal during the training in order to get the information that they may want to say, but being an introvert, they may not want to say it verbally, but being able to write it down and put it in a chat and just leave it there. So I think that's how I've been able to really have some people engaged. So
Thank you, Lisa. Krista?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, connecting with your audience before you give a presentation, or like just knowing who you're really in front of before you even approach the situation. I'm in front of a lot of people on all different levels of life, and just connecting to maybe a child like, hey, I know your mom from this, that, and the other place, or hey, I know your kid. Like, just connecting with people in different ways is really important in the work that I do. I don't know.
Thank you. Those were all great. We're going to move on to the second part of this, and it's as a participant at a presentation or workshop, what made you feel engaged, and what did you not like? You can use this one if you'd like. And how about Dan? We'll go to you, Dan, since you didn't get a chance at that last one.
Yeah. So very recently, I joined a presentation, and I thought this was actually really a really useful thing to do, because there were people that were in person, and then there were people that were virtual. And I was one of the virtual people. And I think that's just an important consideration these days, is just, engaging both types of audiences. And the person who was running the presentation, I can't remember the website that they did, but they had all these questions. It was kind of a game. It was a bit of a competition, but it was all also connected to the content of the presentation. So they would go through the presentation. They would say, okay, quiz time. What's the answer to this question? Then everybody had to put in the answer to the question, and then, your name would pop up, and, whoever won, by the way, at the end of the presentation got a little prize. And I thought that was a really great way to keep people engaged, to make it fun, and to make people connect to the content no matter where they were, because it was an opportunity for people in the room and for people who are virtual to be doing the same thing. So I really liked that. And I know there are a number of different types of things. There's polls you can do and whatever, but I think that that's a useful thing to do for presentations. And what I don't like is when somebody puts up a PowerPoint and literally reads the entire PowerPoint. Just send it to me, and let's not have the presentation at all if that's what you're going to do.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to volunteer? Ashley, I don't think you went yet. Let's go to Ashley.
So I'm one of those introverts that Lisa was talking about, and
Yeah.
I prefer you just send me the PowerPoint and let me read it instead of a presentation. But I think something to get me there, food definitely works. It's nice to have food at activities. And what I don't like is icebreaker type things, but I know they're important, and I know most people like them. So I'm not sure what you do with that. There's some of us that don't, but I don't know.
Oh, thank you. Would anyone else like to weigh in on this before we move to the next?
I'll just jump in as a participant. So Dan, I think I was on that one meeting, and I think it's called Kahoot was the game that we played. But I like it when, when there's an opportunity to ask a question, and similar to like what Dan said, I mean, I don't want them to just regurgitate that. I like to be engaged with the speaker. So I'm always happy when they can have a question and answer session at the end. And I don't really have a piece on the end, so I'll pass on that one.
Now, one more minute, and then we'll move on to the final question. Anyone else? I know, Bill, you want Cindy to answer this again, don't you?
Bill always wants me to answer because he knows that I'll give my honest opinion and honest answer. That's why. So what do I like? What made me feel engaged? So just being able to freely talk. I'm not an introvert, obviously. I can just talk on the whim, but what I really feel engaged about is topics that I know about. If I don't know about a topic, like I'm going to speak less, really. But for the most part, like educating myself is pretty fast and getting to that topic. So that I don't have an issue with. But what I don't like is when like people, I don't know, not to pick on you guys, but to give us time limits. Because, and that's good or bad. That can go both ways. Because I can go on about a lot of different things at a lot of different times. So I do understand that part. So that's my input.
Yeah, and I private messaged Cindy and asked her to say that time limits. I really don't like them myself. They're necessary to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our final question. What ideas or strategies do you know that can help you with sharing knowledge with others in a good way? And I'll just ask for a volunteer.
You mean as the presenter or as a participant or both or either?
What ideas or strategies do you know that can help with sharing knowledge? I would probably say as a presenter. What do you think, Michelle? Could a guy go either way?
Yeah, I think either. I mean, certainly we think our participants have a lot of knowledge as well. So, how can you share knowledge in a good way as a presenter and then also as a participant? However you want to answer that one.
Can go. One thing, I know Chris had mentioned this at the beginning, but I think it's important for knowledge to stick in general is the connection to you and your own life and being able to pull that in no matter what you're talking about. Like I think about, I taught English in public school for 5 years, and you have a curriculum of, really old books that mean nothing a lot of times to students. And how do you connect that to what's going on right now in the world around them or in their own personal life? Like those are the things that make everything meaningful. So I think just the more you're able to pull in connection, the better.
Thank you.
I'll jump in and offer something. And I probably would have answered the first question in a similar way to this. And this is just sort of foundational for me personally as an educator. Things that I've learned along the way is that, whatever strategies you are using, I think if you intentionally are engaging as many of the different sensory systems that a human being has in the presentation that you're making or in the knowledge that you're trying to share, and doing it, different pieces of different information through different sensory systems. So you can show videos. There's benefit to showing video. That's a good way to share some knowledge. Giving things that for people to hold in their hand. Whether it's a handout or it's a photo or a poster or whatever it may be, something that they can grab onto, hold in their hands and understand what it is. And then you've got the opportunity maybe to do some group work or some small group work at a table where people are talking to each other and sharing. Of course, I love the idea of food if that's part of the presentation, but whatever it is, engaging the sensory system, as many sensory modalities as you can, is absolutely critical to processing information. And the more you do that, I think the better it's received.
Thank you, Dan. We got about 1 more minute if someone wants to jump in.
I do, again.
Okay.
So one that I know that works best for us culturally is talking circles. That is the biggest thing to have, is a talking circle, because a lot of good information and then a lot of good conversation comes throughout that, and sometimes we share what little knowledge we have or a lot of knowledge we have, because like in this instance, I wouldn't share with you my knowledge on culture because it doesn't affect you, like it's different. So that's just what I would think. Talking circles.
Okay. And it looks like to be respectful of time and our schedules, we're going to have to end it at that, and we will move on to our next part of our presentation. Thank everyone for sharing. That was all really good.
Awesome. Mumigwich. And I'm really excited to hear that many of you like games. As part of kind of going through our resources later on, we will go over Kahoot and we'll look at some different games that you can play. So I'm happy to hear that you all liked that, and hopefully that may be a resource that you'll be able to use in the future. So we've covered a little bit in depth already in the last workshop, so I'll just be brief here to show you some of these resources that are available. Like Dan had mentioned, engaging the different senses, having printed handouts, something physical that folks can hold. So a really great printed resource to look to, and that Levi will be able to speak more on in our next session, is a printed booklet that he created for his Tribal Civics Workshop. So again, we cannot cover everything that we want to cover in these workshops. So giving folks those tangible things to read and learn from after the fact is a really great thing. You all have also mentioned resources and documents that you've created around the tribal constitution, and you may have additional print resources for your programs or Hocho Katati. I would really encourage you all to develop something like that for your own civics workshops if you think that would be helpful again. And some of you all touched on different things for different learning modalities. So having video and audio for folks who are more visual and auditory learners. In the last workshop, we talked a lot about bringing in knowledge keepers and elders. We know still like COVID is still out there. So maybe a little more challenging for safety factors to get elders into some of these rooms and spaces to have the conversations. So a really great alternative is just to set up a time where you could maybe do a little storytelling recording with an elder. It's really easy to do these things over Zoom, so then it wouldn't require any contact, of course, if we want to be mindful of that. We do, of course, also want to be mindful of other protocols, knowing that some stories aren't meant to be shared publicly or in certain seasons. So just kind of working with that elder to understand how far that video can go, and also different things to think about when you're storing those videos. We saw on your website, you have the ability to lock videos so that you can kind of unlock them in the seasons that they're able to be told, or for members that are allowed to watch them. So it's a really great way to follow those protocols around stories that can only be told during a certain time of year. Of course, there are tons of podcasts and YouTube videos out there, so you certainly don't have to recreate the wheel. And kind of the more resources that you can provide for folks, the better. I'm definitely a podcast person, not so much a video. So if I can have something in my ears while I'm taking a walk or making dinner, that for me is a great way to absorb information. Of course, we've noticed at NGC, we also really like to include pop culture as much as possible. It's kind of another way to lighten the mood just a little bit. So including references to social media, memes, GIFs, can just be another fun little way to engage folks. So now we'll go out into testing some tools. Before I start walking us through these 5 resources, we've used a lot through NGC. I wanted to first ask if anything on this list, so Canva, StorySet, SlidesGo, Mentimeter, and Kahoot, that any of you all have used before. It sounds like Kahoot you guys have maybe used as participants, but have you done Kahoots yourselves or created them? No? Okay, cool. How about any of the other resources? See some head nods. Carissa, you've used some of these tools before too. Cool. Kellen too. Awesome. Okay, well, that helps me know to kind of go how deep into. So we'll transition first into the first tool we're going to look at, which will be Canva. So Canva, if you aren't familiar with it, it's kind of like an alternative to Photoshop. So for those who don't have a graphic design background like myself, we still love to create beautiful things. So you can create all kinds of cool documents and presentations through Canva. You can also make Facebook posts, videos, different infographics, cards, Instagram, of course. And so they have tons of templates here that you can use. And so say we want to make a program flyer. So we'll just go ahead and search for a program flyer. You have all of these different ones that you can use. It can get a little overwhelming. So sometimes, I set a timer for myself to only spend a couple of minutes picking a timer or picking a flyer, because also they're really customizable. So we'll go ahead and find one that we like. And there's a mix of free and premium ones too. I should note that before I go on. So you'll see there's a ton of free resources on Canva, but there are also premium paid options too. So you can see this little pro here is just means that it is a paid thing. So we'll go ahead and customize this Keep Cool Mother Earth flyer that we can use. So you can go ahead and really change every piece of this flyer. You can see there's like a scan here. Canva has a way that it can build QR codes within the content. If you're like NGC and you have like branded colors or certain colors that you like to use for your organization, NGC has our built-in brand kit here. So I can make sure that all of the colors are in alignment with our organization. But if you wanted to also like add in your graphics, you know, we can, let's see, go to photos here. And so there are photos that Canva has inside, so already included, that you can use. We'll just do this cool kind of outdoor course and cover that little image up in the back. You can also upload your own photos too. So let me see where I can find an uploads here. And so here is our NGC team at a staff retreat, getting outdoors, looking excited, keeping Mother Earth cool. So there are tons of options available for you to customize these templates, and they still look really professional. And then you can download them as PDFs or PNGs. You can also, you know, if you want, print flyers, shirts, mugs, kind of the whole gamut of content creation that you would like to do here. Canva also has an option to create PowerPoints. I kind of mentioned that ahead of time. So it's great if you want to kind of use that PowerPoint presentation option and kind of keep it within downloading as a PDF maybe. So they have really great templates already set up for you. The only challenge we found is that when you download it as a PowerPoint, so again, there's that option to download as a Microsoft PowerPoint file. Some of these fonts don't translate, which ultimately impacts the quality of your PowerPoint. So, you know, just being mindful of thinking about how you'll ultimately end up using this tool, but it's a really fun way to bring new style and make you feel like you're a really great designer while you're creating flyers and social media graphics and all the things you need to run a successful event. So the next one we'll look at will be StorySet. Again, I have no background in graphic design, but these tools really make me feel like I'm a cool designer. Another thing is that these resources, so StorySet provides graphic imagery, and they're really editable again. And so here we've got this group of folks that are doing a brainstorming session, but you can see you can kind of remove some of the characters, you can get rid of the plants. And thinking about the branding of your colors, you can kind of shift the color background to align with your event flyer or the program that you're running. And then another thing that we really love about StorySet graphics is they have these illustration styles. So you can see it's the same idea of an image, but with a little bit different like stylized versions. And so this Kuwait one is one that is also really great because you can change the skin color of the characters that are in the picture. And so, you know, one of the things with like stock images is they're often don't include people of color, and so may not match the participants in your room. And so it's really great to have this option to really reflect your participants in the images and in the content that you're creating. And again, just making it really customizable. You can go here and search for an illustration. So we can look up, you know, gardening, since we're kind of in that season too. And it'll pull up all of these different graphic images of gardening. And like I said, you know, you can filter through Kuwait. And then this way, again, oh, that's too many plants. We want to get rid of some plants, but I can never have enough. So we'll add the back end, change the skin color, and then you can easily download this as a PNG file. So it'll download straight to your computer, and then you can add it to PowerPoint presentations, the flyers in Canva, just really making your resources customizable. And so these graphics, again, we use a lot in our presentations and on our slides. So then next up, we will be looking at Slides Go, which is, again, what we use for our PowerPoint presentation. So Canva has this option, but Slides Go is a lot of fun because it, like Canva, has so many cool themes and things that are created in here that are free resources. And so they also have coloring pages, but we primarily use it for our PowerPoint. So all of the PowerPoints that you've received for our workshop series were all made from Slides Go. And so you can kind of filter through and find a template. And what's great is these are different than ones that you'll normally see over and over from PowerPoint or Google Slides. So I'll just use kind of maps as a way for us to think about a slide that maybe we want to look at. Like I said, you can see all of these different map options of slide decks that are out there that are available. So we'll just click this one. And when you're in it, you can also look through and see what the slide templates will look like and just make sure that this is something that, oh, yep, this looks like something I want to use. So you can download this template, and NGC uses Google. And so I'm going to download it to Google Slides. Here we'll just make a copy and it'll save right to my Google Drive so that you'll be able to see what this looks like. So again, it's just really cool, unique slide deck style, and all of this is customizable. And so with this, you can see these different designs and then go through ahead and edit the text. And because it has these different slide options too, it is a great way to think about organizing your information in a way you maybe wouldn't have thought about before. And these things can also be linked to Google Sheet. So if you have data that is located in a Google Sheet or an Excel sheet that you import into Google, you can connect them. And so you can kind of reference things that will reflect kind of these different graphs, charts, really just cool ways to demonstrate and share the information that you've collected to present out to the community. And then at the end of every Slides Go deck, they share, the instructions for using it. The font and colors that are used are really helpful. Again, when you download this, they connect you with the story set graphics that they use. And then also just have these stock graphic resources at the end of every slide. So if you want to, again, adjust and customize this even more for your use, it's just full of tons of free resources. And again, we love to kind of customize things to NGC and make sure that they're reflecting our brand colors for presentation. So you can just go ahead and edit the theme. And to edit the colors, let's see, edit the background color. So we'll change the background color to a lovely, orange. Oops, I got to do it on the master one here. And then this will just change all of the slides that we're using with. So we've got this pretty orange and purple combination. And through this way, you can also then edit, the font style. I know everyone loves the Comic Sans. So you can, again, like I said, these presentations are super customizable and just really fun way to engage your audience, kind of build your own skill set and show folks something new that maybe they haven't seen before. All right. Kind of went through a couple really quickly there. So do we have any questions around Canva, Story Set, or Slides Go? Okay. All right. Well, the next one is a tool that we've probably seen before. I think we use Mentimeter back in workshop 1, but Mentimeter is the presentation platform that Levi uses. So he builds his kind of PowerPoints within Mentimeter. And this is another way that you can have those interactive polls we were talking about. So again, this is really user friendly. You'll just go to kind of create new presentation and we'll do how are you feeling right now? So we'll create a new presentation that way. And so it's broken down by question type. So you can see you can do kind of a multiple choice question, a word cloud, and it will create kind of prompts around this as well. Do an open-ended questions where you can kind of get short answer, interactive feedback in the moment. Do the scale statement, which we used during the Leech Lake Civics presentation. You can have folks rank items, opportunity to do live Q&A. For those who love the games, there is a quiz competition built in. And then these are kind of the PowerPoint slides that Levi will use that you'll be able to see, and you can build a slide deck within Mentimeter and add slides in, and that's how you can also incorporate these popular question types as well. These advanced question areas are new, so I've not quite played with these myself yet, but these are another way that you can kind of like engage folks live through your presentations. And with all of these tools, with Canva, StorySet, SlidesGo, and Mentimeter, I think because of the way that they operate as kind of free resources, folks are constantly adding new content to them, and so they're evolving. So every time you log in, you often see there's kind of a new tool or new way to use it. So with that, we'll go ahead and kind of create a multiple choice question survey to get things started. So instead of like building the PowerPoint or building a presentation prompt in the deck, you'll just build it over here on the side. So again, our question is, how are you feeling right now? Option 1, great. Option 2, so. Option 3, is it Friday yet? Maybe we should say Saturday. And so you can add additional question options to get folks to engage. There's just all these features that you can add. Again, kind of making it fun. You can add images from your own computer. They have an image library. Again, we love a GIF over here. So we'll just do, we'll do this little happy puppy here. And that'll add in to the Mentimeter. We'll give it a second to load. And then I'll go ahead and shift to presenter mode. And so then with our participants, then you can kind of share this out. You go to menti.com. So I'm going to drop this in the chat, or you guys can log in to menti.com and use the code on screen. So let's get a gauge, see how everyone's doing right now. Looking to get some live feedback during this workshop session. So oh, we got some so-sos. I feel that. Oh, somebody's ready for Friday. A couple so-sos. All right, we're like halfway in the middle. I'm hitting people's 2 o'clock slumps. We need to get to this break time, Joe, to get folks to their coffee, I think. Yeah, so anyways, Mentimeter, Levi loves to use this to get like in-person engagement and real-time feedback. And you get to retain this data. So after I close out a Mentimeter, probably in about an hour, hour and a half, I'll get an email that will include the final survey results in there. So this, again, really great way if you want to get folks to leave feedback at the end of a workshop, to do it right from their phones, to give you thoughts and feedback at the end is a really great way to have that. And then you'll be able to download that and access that in the future. It's also anonymous, so I don't know who wants it to be Friday. Could be Joe, because I see him nodding there. But that's just another thing to get that kind of anonymous feedback so folks won't have to worry about what they shared. Do you have any questions around Mentimeter? No? All right. Well, we're going to go into game time now. So some of you have played Kahoot before, but if you have not, Kahoot is a really awesome way to engage folks with the content that you'll be providing with them. So I just am using a business demo game for us here. So these are not questions that will be related to tribal civics in any way, but hopefully they'll be fun for us to kind of play and compete together. So I'm going to put us in classic mode. And then if you could go to www.kahoot.com. Let me see. So I'm going to copy the link and I'll drop this one in the chat again, so we can play. So I'll scan the QR code too and I'll play because I don't know the answers. Okay. Got folks in there, good. Okay. All right. Are we ready? I think that may be everyone. Well, if not, you can go ahead and watch and roll. Okay. So. for blank cost businesses around 12,500 per employee per year. Leadership, office management, professional development, or communication. Then you just click the color symbol that you think the answer is. See if we're correct. Oh man, all right. I think it'll show us the leaderboard next. Oh man, it is not rigged, you guys. I did not know.
I'm thinking it's cheating.
All right. So true or false? So Kahoot has different question formats as well. So it's a really, again, like a fun way to engage folks. Learners will forget an average of 90% of what they've learned within a month. True or false? Okay. All right, true. So that is also something to keep in mind when you're thinking about the content to put in to your presentation, that folks may not remember most of what you've shared. Let's see what the leaderboard, you guys, come on. All right, one more. This will be the last question that we'll do again for you to just kind of see a different format. So order these key steps in the training process. So this one with you all with the educational experience, you probably know kind of this order, but we'll see. I'm gonna close it early. All right. See what the leaderboard says now. Ooh, got an answer streak. Congratulations. Oh, all right. So you can see, like, for those of you that have used Kahoot before, oh, there's a word cloud as well. Okay. Anyways, but it is just a really fun kind of tool to engage learners like you all have shared. That it can really connect folks with the information, and also, again, engage if you've got a hybrid learning style. So all of these platforms, the links are available in the PDF PowerPoint that we sent out to you, and also in the email as well. So hopefully you've learned something new, or even if you were familiar with the platform already, maybe you thought of a different way to use it. So you'll have those to go back to. And with that, now we're heading into our break. So we can go ahead, it'll be a few minutes short, but if we could just have folks kind of take a break and return at 2:20, we'll get rolling again. So grab some coffee, do a little stretch, I'll get some music going. We'll see you at 2:20.
And I swear.
All right, everyone, so we'll get going again. Get you all to come back on, give us a thumbs up reaction, or drop a hi in the chat. Let us know that you are here and with us. Saw Joe grabbed his coffee already, so hopefully you've gotten a snack or some caffeine, had your macro bar. All right, so our next section, we'll be going into reflection and evaluating feedback, and we'll do a glimpse of how you can indigenize your evaluation methods. And of course, you know, we want to utilize evaluation and feedback as a way of connection. So again, encouraging you to get those cameras back on. But with that, I'll go ahead and put up a video from the Urban Indian Health Institute that really just connects the work of their community and how they've reflected evaluation in their work. So let's see, we'll go this way. Here we go.
When we talk about owning things like evaluation, it's not about judging people. It's the exact opposite of that. It's about understanding people and what creates change. We're trying to tell a story, and it's something that as Native people we've always done. We brought some of our program people together to talk about how to do culturally appropriate evaluation. We started with a traditional weaving lesson to encourage the idea that documentation and learning should be woven into every program.
See this part right here? You always pull that until that's tight, not too tight.
And then just pull.
Okay?
Okay.
We are trying to help other people understand that this work we're doing is important and why.
We have strengths in our community and we know what helps, but translating that to funders is a challenge of do they see the value in what we're doing, because we see those results directly through our kids and the kids we work with.
Between speaking with our youth and speaking with our elders and with members of the outside community, it's like speaking different languages.
So in that sense, it can feel like a burden. One additional thing we have to do we have to really ask them to do a survey now? And yet it can also be extremely rewarding.
A lot of what I tried to do is I really invited, tribal members to come to my office. I invited them to give me a call. I invited them to come talk to me after an event, because I valued the fact of people telling me face to face, and whether like how the event went, like what was good, what was bad, what could I have done better.
We use that asset survey that you might be familiar with to help them to self-identify where the strengths are in their community. Whether they know their neighbor or how they can, because we know it, but we haven't always been given an opportunity to have a discussion around it.
Oftentimes it can be something where you bring in images or you ask people to create art that illustrates what transformation they feel that they've experienced.
We just ran our meetings a little bit differently, but we were still able to get the outcomes that the grant wanted. Really having to speak two different languages, like being able to meet with the community and hear their feedback and translate that to our funders.
Just figure out what outcomes are important for your program and for your community, and then measure the things that relate to that outcome. Use what you learn to improve your programs and connect with the people.
I think that those true connections and that acknowledgement of making those connections is what we've learned as Native people, is what we're trying to maintain.
Evaluation is something that we should own as part of what we do in our everyday work, define for ourselves, and use as a tool that works for our communities.
When you're twisting, you're going to feel the difference in your fingers after the day is over with. Your fingers are going to get sore. Gina did her bracelet.
I'm my big old head.
Rose finished her rose. Rose did a rose.
All right. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a glimpse into how you can indigenize your own evaluation methods. And of course, not everything they were talking about in the video, like communicating to funders, things like that may not really be relevant in your tribal civics workshop. But still being able to solicit that input, because if you're not able to get that feedback, there's no way for you to really improve your programs in a way that meets your community's needs. So with that, we'll kind of look at different ways that we can do that. So you can meet your community where they're at, which of course is always the best way to get that input. We sent a number of links and ideas in the Nourish Your Mind resources for this particular workshop. And a lot of them are really around this evaluating and reflecting and getting feedback. So definitely would, if you haven't gone through those different resources already, we would recommend that you kind of thumb through those. A lot of them are from the Urban Indian Health Institute because they've done a lot of work in this space. So when we think about the importance of gathering feedback and input from participants, really the biggest kind of benefit of doing this is that it allows them to be active in their own learning. So we talked about really wanting to engage folks in the content, connect that content to them and personalize it, and allowing folks to provide feedback so they can reflect on what their experience was, how it made them feel, and just kind of revisit the day in their minds. So of course, we know this really has a big benefit, not just in getting the feedback for ourselves and the input, but it can be important for those participants to spend time reflecting on what they experienced, which can really just deepen their learning. The more often that we can have folks reflect and think back, the more likely they are to retain this information, like we saw in that very appropriate Kahoot question about how much learners really do retain, or rather how much they don't. So it's also really important to get this input because you can then implement their suggestions to help evolve your civics program to make sure it's as useful as possible. So for example, for NGC, we do our surveys at the end of every workshop. And in a different kind of workshop series, someone had mentioned that the materials that we send out use too much ink when we print them. So that's why you'll see when you get the agendas in your email, you'll get kind of a pretty digital designed one from Canva that uses a lot of ink, has a lot of color, but you'll also get a printer-friendly agenda too that uses much less color. And so those are little things, but that was just something that we didn't think about since we were designing a virtual workshop. We assumed folks would just look at the agendas virtually. But because we got that feedback, we learned that some people really would rather print all their materials. And so for this on the team was something that was really helpful and was an easy change for us to make going forward to help make our materials more accessible. So again, those little tweaks and little adjustments can really help meet the need of your participants. Of course, people will have comments kind of larger on your program that will have impacts as well, but sometimes those little things that can make things inaccessible are the easiest to change. It's also important to gather input prior to creating your civics course. It's easy for us to assume that we know what folks want to learn or what folks already know since they are community members. But we won't really know until we ask them. And so since this course is meant to help the community, you want to make sure it is as helpful and useful as possible. So really the only way to make sure that's happening is to get feedback. There's a lot of different ways you can have folks provide this feedback and to evaluate the data. So we encourage as much as possible, again, integrating with those Indigenous practices, as well as can be, just as informal as conversations with family and community members. That's something that Levi will speak more to at the next workshop, how a lot of the best feedback that he's gotten was just kind of sitting at different ceremonies or different community events and kind of picking people's brains on what does the community need to learn more about, or have you heard about this program? What have you heard? Just kind of that informal, which can really give you the best information because folks don't feel the pressure that they might have if it's in a formal setting or needing to write something down on a paper survey. Of course, you can do more formal structured interviews and surveys, of course, but even those you can make a little more Indigenous with structured interviews, kind of asking open-ended questions, sending questions in advance so folks know what to expect, being transparent about what's going to happen with the data they provide. And then with surveys, it's really important to just kind of keep them short and to the point. So we don't want to overwhelm folks with a lot of questions. Really helps too, you've noticed probably at the end of our programming is we set aside about 5 minutes to have folks fill out the survey during the workshop. We used to not do this and would just email the survey link out after the workshops. And we had a really low survey response rates, maybe like 20% on a good day. So now that we've implemented this kind of structured time for folks to fill out the survey, we've now been able to get 100% or close to 100% response rate. So that takes a little bit of time out of the session, but it's definitely time that's worthwhile. Cindy already brought this up, but having community meetings or talking circles is another great way to get feedback. And of course, bringing food together or people together over food, or doing a cultural activity, excuse me, allows folks to provide reflections. Sorry, folks. Sorry about that. Okay, so you saw in the video that they were doing weaving together, but also doing like a beading circle where everyone's making earrings, just kind of chatting together to provide their feedback allows folks to be more comfortable and open. And again, like keeping their hands busy during a workshop is a really great way to help folks integrate their practice. One final way to get feedback that we've noticed is really effective is through social media polls. Natives love Facebook. So going to where the people already are, people are scrolling their social media pretty much any time of day. So just taking a couple of minutes to write out on Facebook. Facebook already has a polls option embedded in there. So it's a great way to solicit information. Your community may have different Facebook pages or certain groups that are specifically for your members that are a great way to get information out, and then also to ask for feedback and input. And then, of course, anytime you can get real-time feedback is the most reliable. So like we talked about already with Mentimeter, or also just simply asking the room how you're feeling. You can do the 0 to 5 kind of hand check-in. Of course, there's pros and cons with every approach. Mentimeter kind of excludes folks who aren't super tech savvy, but it does allow for that anonymous feedback. And as we've talked about too, in a large group, folks may not feel comfortable sharing negative feedback, or introverts who love the chat feature. So it's really great to just offer a variety of ways for folks to engage and share how they're feeling and their thoughts about the program. So again, please look through the resources that we sent out earlier. There's a lot of great frameworks and evaluation techniques that folks have already created, so you really just don't have to invent the wheel. So of course, there's a slight difference between input feedback. So some of the questions here that we've listed out solicit input prior to having your workshops. Again, these are all from page 23 on the Tribal Civics Guidebook that you all have. So feel free to use these if they're helpful, but it's just a way to get a pulse on what folks want to learn in your community, how they like to learn. I know we've talked about kind of asynchronous or synchronous options, in person or hybrid. And then if there's any other resources or formats that you should be utilizing. We've said it over and over, but your community members, our people, are really just the best resource when it comes to information and expertise. So as much as you can really tap into your network, it really will just benefit your program. Again, another long list of questions that will solicit feedback. What did you enjoy? What didn't you enjoy? Can always be really insightful to ask folks what they learned today. Because, we can try and teach X, Y, and Z, but ultimately we never know what point is going to stick to the individual people the most. So you'll be surprised often by the feedback you may receive that something that you didn't think would be impactful will probably be turning out to be someone's favorite part. And I think we hear that often, like culturally, when you may hear your creation story over and over, but some days there's a piece that sticks out to you differently because you're meant to hear that at that specific day at that point in your life. So again, great way to get the pulse on what's going well, what's not going well, and recommendations to improve, especially as you start up your first civics project. You're not going to get it right the first time, or you're not going to get it perfect the first time. And so this will give you a chance to improve to meet the needs. And as always, the conditions in our communities are constantly changing. So you want to make sure that the workshops you're providing are always going to be relevant and applicable to the folks sitting in your chairs. I think Carissa raised a great point of really being aware of who your audience is and how you can connect with them. Of course, it's always fun to call out relatives or folks who their families too. So that can be helpful in thinking about the content that you're you're providing to when we talk about celebrating leaders in the community, if you've got somebody's nephew there to just really uplift their relations. So we'll go into our next slide, which is one of our last facilitated group discussions of the day before teamwork. So Joe, I'll hand it back over to you.
Cool. Thank you, Michelle. Guys, I know I was supposed to last time just give you 5 minutes to answer these questions. Would you prefer to take 5 minutes and just kind of jot down your own ideas up for each of these questions, or just kind of do it the way we did last time? Does it matter? Okay, let's try. Lisa, go ahead.
I was gonna say I like the way we did it the last time.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just jump right into it that way then. We'll start with the first question. We'll take 5 minutes. Well, we got a little bit longer than 5 minutes, but what ways have you evaluated programs or courses before? Again, like last time, we'll capture your answers in the Jamboard for you, which will be accessible after the convening. Evaluation. I know Dan has done some evaluation before, so I'm going to pick on Dan to start off with, just to get this thing started.
Thanks, Joseph. Well, lots of different ways of evaluated programs and courses. One that is simple that I really like, but you do have to have a little bit bigger group or audience, is like an NPS style evaluator. Where you go, 0 to 10, where 9 and 10 are your promoters, and then all the numbers in between. Like, that's a reasonable way to get a good understanding of how people responded to the program or the course or whatever it is. The only thing you can't get on that typically, unless you add to it, are narratives or verbatims, which I also like to do, is to have both sort of a number score of some kind, so you can get kind of number data, and then verbatims. Those generally tend to, the combination of those two things are most helpful to me.
Thank you, Dan. Bill?
I'd like to say that I like it when you're actually at the end, when you hand out a piece of paper, and sorry, I'm probably old school on that, but I think when we've done that in a couple of different settings throughout the time that I've been at Shakopee Sioux, seems like we get like really good feedback for the fact that everyone feels guilty if they don't put something on their paper. So I'm saying I'd like hard copy.
Thank you.
I can speak when we do Carissa's classes. She has just a little quarter page evaluation that 1 through 5, and then she has different questions, like 5 questions on the front, and then it gives people like, what suggestions do you have and stuff like that for on the back, and they can write down, and then like, what would you like to see in the future, what other programming and stuff like that. So Carissa has a really good setup for her, all of her programs, and that really works good, because after the intro to sewing classes every single month, like, we get to learn what they liked, what they didn't like, and etc. like that. So that's really been really good. And she disappeared.
I think she was upset because you stole her answer.
Probably, because she's my daughter.
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Cindy. We have time for one more on this question. Would anyone else like to share? Do we have any introverts out there?
Wouldn't call myself an introvert, but I think kind of even what Bill and Cindy were saying, there's something really special about paper for some reason. I've done, those surveys in different formats, and I find like if you do a Google Forms, a lot of the time people just click the button and there's a place for feedback and no one ever writes anything there. But for some reason, when it's paper with, pen and pencil, people tend to actually write in comments that I think are really helpful.
Okay, thank you for sharing. We're going to move on to our next question. So what feedback tips and strategies have you worked or that have worked for you? Can't read. Carissa, I know you wanted to answer before your mom answered on that one question, so we're going to start with you.
I so wanted to answer. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
know she stole your answer and you got upset and jumped
No,
off.
my
That's the one you were
tech
done.
issues today are ridiculous. So what feedback tips and strategies have worked for you? I don't know about that question. Whatever I get from surveys, I really take to heart because they are from community members. So they are my main stakeholder here at the Hochikadati. So I really take into account what they write on those papers. And if they hated the consultant that I bring in, I usually don't bring that person back because I'm not gonna do what they don't like. So I just take everything that they say, whether length, if I didn't have all the supplies, if just everything into account when I do get feedback from those papers that my mom talked about.
Thank you. I'm gonna pick on Lisa because your camera's off, Lisa. I'm gonna pick on you.
She said in the chat she'll be back in 5 to 7 minutes.
Oh, okay. Obviously, that's
We'll
why
get
your
her at
camera's off.
2:45.
Okay,
Next
well,
question.
since Lisa's not here to pick on, I'm gonna pick on Ashley. She was the introvert I was picking on last time. She said she's introverted.
Well, I've never really done a presentation before, so I don't know.
Okay. I guess we could flip that too. Have you given any feedback tips during and for presentations that you think could be valuable in really promoting and working through the civics project?
Oh, nothing that we haven't already talked about, I don't think.
Okay, I'm done picking on you then. I apologize.
It's okay.
All right. We have time for one more on this question. What feedback tips and strategies have worked for you? Should we pick on Michelle? I'm just teasing you, Michelle. I'm not going to make you answer. Okay, so guys, we'll move on to the last question then. How did you use the input to inform your program or course? And we're going to go back to Dan.
Well, if I go to, the examples that I used, if you start with like a net promoter score, for example, how good did people feel about it? If you've got a lot of neutral responses there, often that means that your content was boring. I think that's kind of how I would classify it. And if that's the case, then you really have to go into ideally, then you can connect to the verbatims and see if there's any language or information in there about the specifics of what it was. But then you take that and you massage your content and you evolve what's in there. And again, you're looking to decide, well, was it the method of delivery? Was it the information itself? Was it the combination of those two things? Was it me? Should I get somebody else involved instead? What was it specifically? And then if you can get really concrete feedback, which is what you're always striving for, then, you do what the people are asking you to do for the most part without compromising the message that you're trying to get across.
Thank you, Dan. I know, Chris, you gave a response about, maybe some consultants that you were working with, and if the people didn't like them, you didn't bring them back. So that definitely had an impact on the program or course.
Has it
Anyone
helped
else?
you find consultants too, Carissa? Like, has that been feedback that folks have been like, oh, you should, like, maybe this person wasn't so great, you should actually try this other person? Or has that not been something that folks have generated?
So usually it's like people don't know people, and then I have to find said people. And usually it's not an issue. It's just some teachers in our cultural ways are better at explaining things, or they're just better at doing something as a whole. So it's not like I'm never going to ask them again. I just maybe won't ask them for that specific thing that I asked them for. So like one is the one that I think of specifically is like, she came in, it was like a horse mask teaching, and she didn't really know where the horse mask came from, like what tribe it came from. And I was like, well, like you're teaching that, like how don't you know? So really getting people that know what they're talking about and that know where this stuff comes from, not just off of Google search, because our culture is very much not on Google. Or it's very misconstrued if you do find it on Google. I just think, yeah, I'm rambling now, but just finding people that fit the community's needs is my hardest thing ever. So
No, absolutely. Those are good points because it definitely adds to the impact and the success of your program or your course. So that was great, Carissa. Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to weigh in on this question? Bill, did you go?
You know what, I just really, earlier Carissa was talking about how she used it. The only time that I generally get, like, whenever I do anything, I always get positive feedback. So I guess the question that I might ask this whole group is, how do I get negative feedback from people? Because they don't want to tell me that. So, I mean, that would be a question that I would have for this group. So.
Would
you
anyone
just
like
go on
to?
Facebook and see what people say. I'm just kidding.
I'll speak. I'll speak. As a member, like I will always be honest, because to me, honesty is the most important thing. That, being honest is being truthful, like, and so many other of our values. But also, like, some people are afraid to speak up vocally. I'm not. I don't, like, I could care less. Like, either way, if people don't like me, they don't like me, and that's okay. And if people don't like the way I'm doing things, like, that gives me good feedback, and people have said that, so that's not an issue with me. But for some people, they're either afraid to say the truth because they might get fired. As employees, community members, like, sometimes they don't want to hurt other people's feelings because, then you might have some family animosity and rivalry and all of that stuff. So it can go many different ways. I will always tell Bill, good, bad, or ugly, how it goes. Carissa will always tell good, bad, or ugly how it goes. And we, like, another community member that you work with, Bill, she probably wouldn't say good, bad, or ugly because she likes her job. She's trying to get into positions or something like that. So a lot of it has to do with, like, where is my future going? If I'm going for an elected position, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be quiet, because if I say something, then some people don't know how to handle the truth either. So then they get, like, it turns into something else, ugly, like within themselves. So when you say, like, you got to meet people where they're at, that's also kind of with them telling the truth, and kind of like being anonymous. That's why a lot of members won't fill out online forms, because they're like, nope, you're gonna know my name, you're gonna know this, you're gonna know that, so I don't want to fill it out. Or you have those people where you fill out evaluation cards, and then they're like, oh, I know your handwriting, so this is like, then it comes back on them. And I've had it happen. So there's different ways on doing it, but yeah, that's just, I will always speak the truth no matter what.
That is
I
great,
think so
Cindy.
too, is taking negative and positive input and using both of that to help your program or course. Like, you need to know both sides of everything before you change or modify anything that you're doing. You have to really, I don't know, take it all into account before you just change everything up.
Absolutely. Those are two great responses. When we think about the work that we're going to be doing and some of the discussions that we'll be having in community, some of these topics aren't easy to talk about. And, Cindy hit the nail on the head where she said, there oftentimes there's going to be discomfort based on, your position. So, having anonymous surveys where people feel safe, where it can't be connected, might be a great opportunity to consider in this work. So I want to thank everyone for their discussions and responses to these questions. Does anyone have anything else to add in these areas? Any one of these questions before we move on? Okay, we are a little ahead of schedule, which is great for me. The next slide, I think we're going to look at what we've accomplished so far, and that is for me as well. Okay, it looks like this time I'm going to give you some time to reflect on what we've accomplished so far, and what work needs to be done for workshop 4. So what current ideas have we brainstormed? Is that where we are, or am I ahead here, Michelle? Yeah, I think that's what
you're great. Yeah, no, these kind of these discussion prompts are just as a way now that we've moved into kind of our team meeting time. So this is a really more informal structured time for you all to think about the work that you've accomplished in terms of generating ideas in the audience and prepare for this tribal civics presentation. So actually, Joe, I wonder if we should go back a slide, and if you wanted to go over the presentation idea format with them so that they have an idea of maybe what we'd like to see. And then we can kind of go into those discussion question prompts. Does that work?
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, I thought that this was going to be your slide, Michelle, but
oh no, sorry about that. Then
no, that's not a problem. So it looks like, and I'm just going to go off the screen here, guys. So our audience is going to be myself, Michelle, and Levi. Other NGC staff will be joining us. Danielle, who is an administrative person with our organization, and also our executive director, will most likely be in session just to really learn and to share in your journey. Topics to cover in the presentation. Definitely we want to talk about the vision, really your hopes and dreams and goals and objectives of the Civics Project, what you're hoping to change within your community, or what you're hoping to inspire. We definitely want to have a focus on the format. What is it going to be virtual? Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be hybrid? We talked about different approaches where, you can actually have a successful convening as a hybrid session. Is it going to be one, or is it going to be multiple sessions? When we look at content, the ideas for the topics, I think this group has had just a wealth of content that you've already expressed as interests. And, there's so many diverse points of view, and there's so much value. So really narrowing down that content on what you want to really support within your presentation is going to be something that your team is going to have to discuss. Looking at the information, the resources that you're considering, the tools and approach. Michelle spent some time today just sharing some useful technology that can be used to really support your convening, your training. Those might be things that you want to use it, and then again, you might want to do something a little differently, but that's going to be something that your group will have to decide and how you move forward. When you think about sharing knowledge, your teaching strategies and your tools, what is that going to look like for your community? And again, once you're done and you deliver your civics training, you want to definitely look at evaluating your program ideas. Now we'll jump in. So what current ideas have we brainstormed? Were we going to reflect, Michelle, on some of the boards that we had? Are we going to bring those up? Are we just going to let the group just?
I'll
Okay.
put them in the chat. I'm going to leave these questions up, but I will link the Jamboards in the chat so that if you wanted to go back through, this workshop 2 Jamboard includes that long list of topics that you all thought would be important to cover and other knowledge keepers that you may want to bring in. And this workshop 1 Jamboard includes those initial goals that you talked about, kind of the vision that you had for tribal civics, the impact that you thought it could have on the community, the impact that you wanted it to have, and then the outcome that you would see. I think you talked a lot about, more engaged members, engaged in your meetings and in the community as a whole. So I think these are useful for us to reflect back on and for you to see what you came up with. So if you wanted to take a few minutes to look at those Jamboards, and then you can kind of think about, what ideas you have around these discussion prompts here.
Is everyone able to access the Jamboard with your comments? Okay, great.
I really do like when we get to reflect back on some of these things and to see what we all put on the list. So thanks.
Absolutely.
Are
So,
there any that stuck out to you or that you really want to make the focus?
I know it's in the top, and this is why it's really nice to have Carissa and Cindy on it, is that, I think we it's important for us to focus on the youth, but I just feel like there's a lot of young adults in our community that, I really want, I would really like to have them involved. I think that sometimes, when I think, back, there's some things that like, hey, I was forced to learn in high school or whatever, it didn't really make sense. But as you get older and you kind of like, oh, so I'd like to somehow draw in maybe the group that's maybe a little bit younger than Carissa and see what they think on some of these things. I don't know. And I'd like to hear from Carissa what your thoughts are.
I'd like to say I'm not that old, one. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. I think honestly, so the age that I could see really gaining a whole different perspective of tribal civics as a whole for themselves would be probably that 14 to 23-year-olds is what I'm assuming. You don't really learn a lot about yourself when you're in like US history, Minnesota history, and like you learn that in 5th grade and then they check the box and then you're done. So I think that age group is really key. And Bribery Works, as Kellen probably knows for her financial literacy class, if we had some sort of perk for these kids, I don't know, maybe it's a night out at Dave & Buster's all together or something along those lines where it's not so much things, it's togetherness, it's experiencing something together as a whole. I think that's important to the tribe right now. I don't know. I'm just assuming that's what I see in my day-to-day work. But yeah. Does that answer the question? I don't know. Okay, sweet. I'm really tired today. If anyone can tell.
Yeah. No, great, Carissa. I think that's a great idea, especially when you're gathering youth, if you could do it in a way that's where they perceive value. Absolutely. Night out to Dave & Buster's. We don't have a Dave & Buster's in our community, but
I mean,
would
Space
absolutely be up for
Aliens.
that.
Just kidding. Space Aliens is in North Dakota, right?
Yeah, I would have to travel probably 3.5 hours, but I'm up
Dang
for
it.
it. We're very rural.
Oh, dang it. But yeah, I don't know. I think something between the ages of 14 to 23 would be really impactful for this course. And that's usually kind of like our pilot, what we kind of pilot on community members is usually the 13 age group until like 18. I don't know. That's just Kellen and I don't know if Kellen's still on. I can't see you.
I'm here.
Okay, sweet. If you could talk about what we did for the summer youth work program last year, I think that was really awesome. And it was a really good opportunity to sort of pilot this around that because we had so many people really interact with us. And they were all community members and they were young and getting older. So
Yeah.
I'll leave it to Kellen.
Yeah, I'll talk about that. And even you made me think about, I had this amazing experience with a community member youth at the cultural center, which I'll talk about in a second too, that made me think of what you were saying as well. But what we do in the summer, we have a summer youth work program where students are able to work within their community and be able to kind of look at what leadership opportunities might be available in the future that they might want to do. So, there are positions at Chakotay Tea. We're looking at ones in land, Playworks, the different entities that we have out here. And then on Wednesdays, the kids can do as part of their paid hours, come to a lunch and learn. So for the first hour, they learn how to make something healthy and they make it together and eat. The second hour, then we do something that is related to what they need to know as they become adults in their community. So we've done financial planning. We've done, Rebecca came in and did like a civics project, things along those natures. And then the last half an hour, Carissa does a different cultural activity with them. So a lot of them learned how to bead for the first time this summer, which was really cool. And we had great attendance for that every single week with our youth. And I agree with Carissa that age is really, the time where they're starting to understand they're either about to turn 18 and kind of move into that adulthood, or they're now 18 and they're starting to understand their role a little bit more in the community. And, I went with a community member youth this morning who just chose by random chance for school, for his topic he wanted to talk about. He noticed a lot of divide sometimes in between tribes and he wants to know why that is. And we got to go through and talk about colonization and kind of what happened, in terms of how, the Dakota lost their land, and he learned so much about that history. And I think he's 17. This is the first time in his life where he's like, okay, that's meaningful to me and that means something to me. And I understand how it affects me now. And, even as we talk about kids and how they're kind of processing all that information and becoming an adult, I think that especially that 16 to 23 range to me is that time where they're really starting to focus on that and where this information is really meaningful to them. And, I love that we've been able to incorporate those lunch and learns. I'd love to be able to really pilot a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now with that group, because, kind of as Bill was saying, if you want positive and negative feedback, a great place to go is to teenagers because they will certainly share their negative feedback.
Kellen, and Carissa, did you guys feel like when you have the array of age groups? I think Carissa, you said 14 to 23, and Kellen 16 to 23. Do you feel like one group or age kind of monopolizes discussion, or is there opportunity for everyone within that experience?
I think that there's opportunity for everyone. I think the nice thing about being in a community and it, everybody knowing each other, there's a little bit more of that safe space that is created where, I think even some of our kids that don't speak up, maybe when they're in the classroom at school, are a lot more willing to share their thoughts and ideas with their cousins and their family and the people that they're around.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the community is very small, of which we live in. It's very small and it's very interconnected. And that group is the group that would be listening to each other, having these hard conversations because it's their group. Like they're in it, they're gonna be in it. We're all learning from each other all the time. So I mean, there's no really the shy kids are the young ones, the 13-year-olds, the ones that are going through a lot in their personal lives. And then also the older ones. It's that like 15 to 17 where they're really going to tell you, hey, this is going on, this is going on. And they are not shy about being vocal, I think. And yeah, I don't know.
No,
It's a good
thank
age.
you so much for that response. I was just, kind of thinking, when I looked at the youth council, I work with youth council in my community, and I had seen kind of, sometimes the older kids were monopolizing conversations, and then, the younger youth council were kind of timid. But it's great if if it's something that works in your community and there's respect and everyone knows each other, and absolutely. So we're kind of nailing down, the age group. Does everyone feel good about the age group? The 14 to 23, 16 to 23 age group, teens. Yeah. Would anyone like to see anything different? What about format? When we talk about, the format we talked about, in person or virtual? What are your thoughts?
I think definitely in person works for our community best. As we pilot this and we learn how to do things better, I think we can branch it out more and more every single year. But in person definitely works for our community 100%. We always have technical issues, and we want young and old to be involved with this. So I think in person would be the best. And then we can feed them bribery with food. It works. I'm telling you, they always come for snacks. They know I have them too, so they always come.
So when is it offered? When is the course offered? Cindy?
I don't want to dominate this conversation.
Everyone jump in.
Well, you and Kellen work with the kids.
I know.
And work with the youth. So
I know. So I would definitely recommend starting as a pilot program for this summer youth work program, just because they're getting paid to do this. So that's a thing they get dropped off for. Their parents want them to be involved because they're getting money for being there. They're learning valuable lessons for being there. And they don't have to compete with their school schedule and their summer or their after school schedule. So I think if we're really thinking about the youth being involved and really capturing them first, I 100% think summer would be a great opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. And I think that you have them gathered together. There's the food component. I think the just established of, something that's been great over, I think this past year, this last summer was the most youth we've ever had involved in the summer youth work program. It's kind of becoming the thing you do, that rite of passage as you start to turn 13, and kids are excited about it, and anything that is connected to that, they want to be a part of. So it's a really great captive audience for this type of material.
I'm looking at, some of the responses that you gave within the goals and objectives. And I think that's on slide 3 of, I'm not sure which one that was, Michelle, that you did send. Your goals and objectives for the group that you're considering.
I think it's number 2, workshop number 2, maybe, where it's blue, right?
Yep, blue, yellow, and green on the slide that I'm looking at, 3 of 12. That's the one, yeah, absolutely. So your thoughts. So now you're really narrowing down a lot of the discussions that you've had and a lot of the ideas. You're looking at an age group, you're looking at a specific group of individuals. It sounds like you're targeting people who would already be employed, would be an audience that's going to get compensated for being there. They're going to get fed. what do you want to share with them? What is your goal for your civics convening? What do you really want to highlight and promote and prioritize?
I think for me, like, I was, do you want to go? Kind of going back to that thing that we were talking about with connection, like, I think talking about the idea of how tribal government works and things like that, they're like, okay, I get that, but really understanding their power and their role in being part of that general council. I don't know if that truly is understood by so many of our youth, and really being able to connect them to, you are the leaders of tomorrow. You are the people who make the decisions of where, this community heads in the future. And really helping the youth to connect to that would be a big goal of mine.
Good. No, Dan.
To that, and again, I'm still very much at the beginning stages of understanding the community, the people, its rhythms, its needs, and so on. But we in the education department here, we talk a lot about youth engagement in general, which, so piggybacking off what Kellen said, not just talking about what it means, the civics project and some of the information, but then also being very concrete about, you've learned some of these things now, where are you going to engage? Or here are the opportunities that are specific for you as a 14-year-old versus you as a 22-year-old, right? And then making sure that that's very clear and, not necessarily forcing the engagement, but strongly encouraging and rewarding, like actually walking down the path of engagement. And maybe that's a celebration of somebody who did something that maybe they weren't ever going to do before until they took a course like this, for example. So that outcome increasing GC participation, or basically just increasing engagement in different areas from the type of people who are going through this would be great. And then I also wanted to offer just maybe an extra perspective on the audience. I agree wholeheartedly that sort of 14 to 23, 24-year-old age group is great. And at the beginning, I think that probably fits perfectly. Maybe as this grows and we understand how the presentations work and how people are responding to them, I think if you can engage kids younger as well in some way, shape, or form, so that it just becomes part of their life as a member of the tribe. But in smaller chunks or in different formats, and things are a little bit more fun. But there are some really precocious 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds too. And if you can find ways to engage them in this earlier on, I think that they will become much more involved at the next step. So I would just, maybe again, not right away, but for the future evolution of the project.
I think that's a great idea, Dan. Okay. I'm just looking through some of the content. So moving on to the next slide, on number 4, we're looking at topics and subtopics. And I know we kind of touched on this, but when you're really thinking about your presentation for week 4 and some of the topics that you want to include, tribal economics, voting in elections, you have some of your youth that won't be able to vote yet, but you can have a discussion with them on what's important and what they should be looking for in their tribal leaders, and what type of maybe things that they should understand about the election process and how their government works. Those are very valuable things. And on the other side, you're going to have people who've been voting for a while, who within our community, you have to be 25 in order to run for council, but it's not unheard of to have a 25-year-old council representative. So I don't know if that's the same within your community, but some of them might have already had experience within tribal government or worked within tribal administrations and have different things that they can share or that they would understand. Looking at this tribal state relations, jurisdictional issues, the history of gaming. I know Shakopee is a huge gaming tribe. The tribal economics. It's just so many topics. So really, just really thinking about your audience and who you want to work with, and where you really feel the value and the needs within your community. Those are going to be great discussions that you can have amongst your team, and really nailing down what it is that you want to have within your presentation. And it's like Dan said, in the future, when your civics project evolves or you want to include more people, those topics don't have to stay the same. They can change and transition based on your audience. So I really see a lot of value there. History. Wow. The history of your people. I'm sure that the history of your nation is taught within your school systems. And so if I'm seeing the Dakota Wars and pre-colonization, Constitution, I'm talking about business council, general councils, voting versus non-voting members, federal Indian policy. Those are just different topics to consider. Do you have any that really jump out to you? Where do you see the value right now, building off something that you may already be engaging your youth with? Kellen, Carissa?
I'll jump in.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
I think, first of all, our government structure is always evolving. We've changed a lot of things over the years, but I think it's understanding how the government structure works. I know, so I think that would be key, but I really do like a number of the things that are up there. And I like the rights and duties of community members. And I think sometimes, that might not be clear to some, so.
Yeah, I would agree absolutely with that, Bill. And, I was thinking when you were talking to Joe, something I love Carissa says a lot of times to the kids is we might be sitting in a room with the future business council members. And the kids, I think, always laugh at that, like that's some type of like abstract concept that, they could never be a member of business council, and them really understanding, this is where, business council, they're community members just like you. And one day you will be that age and you have the ability to do that too. I think even being rooted in roles, responsibilities, and the opportunities that are available to you, I think is a really abstract concept to a lot of our youth.
Great. Cindy, I knew you had a comment back a little while ago, and I didn't call on you. So did you have anything you wanted to add or share?
No, I'm good.
Wanted to make sure that no, we didn't silence you, because I know Bill would not appreciate that, right, Bill? Okay, so just looking back at the structure for this part of this session, we're looking at what we need to clarify or confirm. We've already begun that process. This is something that you'll definitely have to continue beyond this meeting. But once you're beyond that, you clarify and confirm, the subject, your audience, what's going to look like. Is it going to be a 4-hour session? Is it going to be multiple days? Once you have that, you're going to develop your preliminary plan. And you're going to have to look at what else you need to work on to prepare for the workshop and your presentation to Levi and NGC. Is there anything within this that as you look through the JAM board that you would like to have a discussion on while you have the team together to really clarify ideas, or maybe get some feedback from NGC staffing here, Michelle or I? I know we have this scheduled for until 3:40, so we still have 20 minutes, guys, to work on this.
I guess I just had a question for our team that's built within the community. We haven't had a time or a place to meet other than the times that we meet together with NGC. So I think it's important, like next steps moving forward before the next workshop, obviously, because we have to present something. Meeting as a whole collaborative group about doing all this. Like we need to have some kind of time set aside, and Bill might be able to schedule that easily for everybody than I would be. So I think that's important. And I think we said that at the education group meeting that we needed a time, and one hasn't been figured out. So I don't know. As our summer months get super busy, it's harder to schedule. So sooner than later.
Yeah, and I would agree. I was thinking about that too, Carissa. And I would hate to say it, but I almost like to be just all in the same room, sort of on this versus, because we don't need the NGC folks there, but I think as many people, and so we'll talk offline, but I agree with you.
Absolutely. And I know, there are people who participated in some of these sessions that are not currently present. And we talked about knowledge, skills, resources, something that they can bring to the table in this project. These are, there may be an opportunity or a need for your team to re-engage with people who may not have been attending, to continue to support or contribute to the work. Definitely some things that you need to consider. It looks like Bill's a walking encyclopedia. So just seeing that post-it, someone in your nation who is knowledgeable, I love it. Lifting up the Department of Education and Dan, Ashley with archives. Looking at, Will Hardecker, General Legal Counsel, for maybe some content and support within your presentation, if that was someone or something that you wanted to engage.
I think when scheduling your kind of team meeting to outside, we've seen to just making sure that these, as you mentioned, summer is coming up quickly. So I think of like, if you wanted to pilot this summer to get kind of the ball rolling soon, just because we know that time will come up really quickly. And how can you make this a part of like a recurring meeting? So I'm not sure if your education working group meetings are weekly, bi-weekly, but if this is like a standing agenda item that folks then, as Joe's listing off other stakeholders or other team members that are involved in this, if that's a way to engage with folks, or if this is a separate meeting that is now added to folks' calendars, just to keep this on the forefront of your mind so that you can progress the work forward. Because certainly you'll have, it seems like you've got the structure already set with your summer youth work program, but then thinking about, what you'd like to cover each week, or when you want to cover it, like how much content you want to share with them. You all, seems like you have tons of programming experience with that and building that out. So I think that is, it's really exciting to see how neatly this could fit into your existing work and the opportunities that could have moving forward. But just making sure that this gets on agendas regularly so that you all don't feel blindsided when summer shows up and then you're spending time building out curriculum for the kids when you're kind of already in session. So are your team meetings already happening for that summer youth work group? Cool.
Oh yeah, we meet monthly with the education work group meeting with Kellen, Dan, and a couple others that are not in, or I think all of them were invited to these, haven't they, Kellen? Yeah. So just meeting, but we all come from all these different departments that we need to really hone in, and a day and a time that is recurring. And honestly too, if we didn't build it out for summer youth work program, it could be one session and we tell them about reoccurring sessions that will happen in the future. Like, it doesn't have to be something that's super formal and done already. Usually what happens is we procrastinate and we just throw it together and it works. And I don't know how it works every time, but it does. But I don't know. It just works.
Well, that's interesting. So if you were going to do, let's say, just a one-day session on a specific topic, you could keep that same structure and format, and then just whatever that topic was, reinsert different information that the group shared, and have something reoccurring and continuously re-engaging your community. That is interesting. How does everyone else feel about that? Or would someone prefer to see a week long or 2 week long or some other variation of a training or schedule for this?
I think
think
it's a
it
great
goes-
idea, even if we had like a piece of it built and then really got feedback from the youth, like, from their perspective, what are the things that would be really valuable to them and understanding about their own government and kind of using whatever little piece we'd like to test as a platform to get them thinking about it, I think would be great.
Dan, you had something?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say that if we're focusing on summer youth work group, that age group of kids, uh, definitely no more than a day and probably no more than a half a day, workshop and presentation and discussion is probably going to be best. But just to get to kind of the overall, some of what Carissa was talking about, I agree that we need to get the team together. We need to have a time and place where we're all in the same room talking about it. I would just offer that for me, and it's entirely possible that I missed it. But it's unclear to me who owns this project, who's responsible for ensuring that it actually gets done, and for the content and just kind of all of that. I'm not 100% clear on that, and I think that that's something that we should figure out before we meet. But certainly once we meet, kind of who is responsible for actually doing content creation, putting it into a format, delivering presentations, that's still really unclear, at least to me, unless I missed it.
Dan, it sounds like you volunteered for that.
I don't think I'm the right person
I'm
for
seeing
that,
some
Bill.
consensus in the group here.
Hey, with the SMSC group, I mean, when we get together, to kind of help the process, I have like maybe 3 or 4 presentations that, you could look at it and say, nope, that's not what we want to do, or something like that. So, I mean, I got some stuff that we could work with. And once we figure out the time that we're going to get together and the date, and I'll share them in the meeting invite, but I'll take ownership of that. How's that, Dan? Take that off your plate. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say ownership in tribal nations is a weird situation. No one really owns anything. This is not ours to own. We're all collaborative in this, I feel. And I feel like everybody on the team has been asked to be a part of the team for a specific reason. And I guess, I don't know. This was Becca's idea, which is great. And I'm glad she's pushing it forward. But as ownership wise, I think we all own a piece of it. There's nothing specific that the whole project is not on one team. I don't think. And for us to figure out who can best go after it in sense of delivering it and stuff like that, I think it depends on our audience. And that will change as further along as we get into this, I think. I don't know.
It may change next year.
Maybe ownership isn't necessarily the right word. It's more about who's going to drive it and make sure we get it done. Because if we're all here for a piece of it for
Cindy.
sure, but someone's got to drive it, right? Is that you, Bill?
Vote for Cindy. Vote for Cindy.
You're
Uh-oh.
funny.
Cindy, I know you had something to say, so please.
No, I was gonna go on with Carissa. This isn't this is the tribes. And we're just here as I don't know, facilitators in a way of and sharing and getting the ball going in some way. Each of us has each individual talents and ideas that we all bring to the table, and that's a good idea. I'm not a curriculum writer, and I will continually say that I'm not a curriculum writer, but I am a good teacher. And teaching people how to do different things, as in giving lectures. I don't know about that. Sometimes that can be pretty boring for me because I'm more of a hands-on person. But we all have something different and unique here. And yeah, like Carissa said, this isn't ours as the group to own. This is the tribes to own, and that is something entirely different. So yeah.
Oh, that's a great point, Cindy. Thank you for bringing that up and elevating that point. Beyond the first civics training, let's say that you continue to collaborate and you're all owning a piece of this. Cindy, you acknowledge that this belongs to the tribe and it's something that you're creating for the tribe. How is it sustainable within the tribe? Is there one place that this can continue to live on? It can continue to become what Carissa said. Maybe we inject this new content. Maybe there's an issue around ICWA that we really want to elevate within our community, and whatever that topic is, this could be a vehicle for really sharing and educating your community on something that's so important to your nation. What does that vehicle look like? Just brainstorming. Throw out any ideas you might have.
So I think it would sit in a couple different areas. There's a cultural piece involved in it, a huge cultural piece, I would say. So to me, that would be at Hochakatati, with the curator of cultural education. Parts of it is also with education, and educating students. But also, like, to me as a member, we have to be cautious about some of this information because we don't want some of this information getting into the wrong hands. And that's where I have caution about it, is because if it gets into the wrong hands, it can be used against us in some way, shape, or form. And so that's what I don't want to get to. So either we're going to be really in depth about all of this, or we're going to be really basic about this, or do we want to be mediocre? There's so many different things that this could go to. And then maybe archives holds on to it. I don't know. That's another area that could be a placeholder for it too. So there's many different options.
I think just stemming off of what she said as well. So there is a portal site, and possibly we could build a portal for this to live, and we can have the documents go inside that portal and different sessions, whether it's a youth session, employee, or they could live in that portal. I'm thinking, Bill, does that make sense? Live in like a business council portal that's specially built for this type of thing, and it's very collaborative in that space. Does that make sense to have?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of because it's like, and I think some of us have been on all of these and some have been on some of these workshops. And when you think of like, it's like, it needs to be a place that we can all go to. So I like that.
I love the discussion that's happening right now. This is exactly what needs to happen. That's what this time is really meant for. We look at the next session, I believe July 12th and 13th is workshop number 4. You guys will have your presentation ready. You'll be presenting to Levi, to NGC and the team. I know one of the things that we're asking is if you have any questions for Levi after preparing your presentation, just kind of think about that and be prepared to ask him while he's a captive of NGC and of Shakopee Nation.
I thought our meeting was June 1st.
It is June 1st. Yes.
Is it June 1st? What are
Yes.
we looking at for July?
July, maybe action planning. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So yeah, June 1st. But then also, if you all have questions for Levi, like things that you really
Oh,
want to
action
hit
plan.
on, we can send those ahead of time. So if there's things right now that you're like, oh, this, we want to hear about this. So we do have the questions that came up from workshop 1, but now as you're formatting your own structure, are there things that you would like his insight? And I can pass those along to make sure that he includes those in his presentation.
So Michelle, just that I understand. So on June 1st, we have 25 minutes to present our civics class to Levi and the team, right?
Yes. So not really your civics class, but essentially what we brainstormed today. And I've taken notes on that. So you'll be able to share with us who you're targeting, when you'd like these sessions to happen, what the session will look like, the content that you would like to cover within that session, who on your team will be a part of that. So I think like thinking about who would deliver the content, have you down as you having presentations, so Bill as kind of gathering information, thinking about then like any resources that you may need, and then that's kind of it. And so this will be really cool because Levi is actually just like dipped a toe into engaging with youth. So I'm super excited to hear you all share this plan and then kind of see like if that will inspire action on his side, or maybe if he's got ideas around things that he's also building out for Leech Lake too. So it definitely is just a kind of a broad overview of a who, what, when, how, and any like questions or ideas, like feedback that you may be looking for. But I've taken most of this in the Jamboard. I'll put the link up here again so that you can see it. And essentially this is what we'd like to see. You guys really worked through so much of the content already. And so, I mean, if the opportunity to look through those presentations so you could kind of expand on the content, that you're thinking about covering. But I think even just the idea of sharing more out, about how this will integrate with your summer youth program will be really exciting for Levi to hear about, and then kind of provide his thoughts again, like I said, since this is just something he's starting on. So I hope that's helpful.
And I want to apologize for giving the wrong date there, giving you an extra 2 weeks. And we're going to pull that time back to June 1st. Are there any further questions that anyone has? I think we are just about at time. And we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back for closing and next steps.
Yeah, so we can go into the break time if there's no other questions. All right, well, we'll get a little bit of an extended break and we'll see you all back here at 3:45. All right, so we'll come back together to close out our session. Forgot we ended with kind of my favorite GIF. So hopefully you're not feeling too much like Dallas falling over at the end of the day, but it's also okay if you do, because we've finally made it to the closing remarks. I would also like to do a little plug for another NGC program on Friday, tomorrow night at 7. Dallas, Goldtooth, and Wayne, our executive director, are going live on Facebook on a program called Sovereignty Side Quest. So they'll be playing video games together, and then also talking about sovereignty and current issues in Indian country. So just a fun way to connect. So if you're on Facebook tomorrow night, come check out the NGC Facebook page. But to get us closed up, really at this point, as we always do, while we have you as the captive audience, we'd love to hear your feedback and to get you all to fill out the survey. So I'm going to drop that link in the chat here. So if you could take a couple of minutes to get that completed, and I'll keep an eye on responses. And once we have a good number, we'll get going again. But I'm going to go ahead and turn some music back on, let you all tell us how we did.
Remember me When the sun comes up in the morning sky, there I will be. There I will be. Soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me. Down the road, hand in hand, you and me. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Hey, we are with it, oh, oh. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are with it, oh, oh. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are with it, oh, hi, oh, hey. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky, there I will be, soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me, down the road, hand in hand, you and me. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are, hey, oh, oh. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are, hey, oh, oh. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are, hey, oh, hi, oh, hey. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky, there I will be, soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me.
All right, well, thank you all for getting those done. If you're still working through, that's all right. You can keep that tab open, get that finished. I'll also email out the link as well in our kind of post-workshop email. So again, I just want to say thank you for joining us today and really getting the chance to reflect on all the work that we've accomplished in these last 3 workshops together. So we've been talking a lot today about what the next steps will be, which of course, again, will be your presentation to share your ideas and your plan and to get feedback. And again, Levi will be there to ask any questions, especially about especially about how he's conducted Leech Lake Civics, kind of maybe navigating some of those challenging conversations or thinking about the privacy issues that, you brought up today, wanting to make sure that conversations that are staying internal to the community, or how he is mindful with that, knowing that Leech Lake Civics is conducted with any tribal employee. So he noted that about 70% of Leech Lake's employees are band members, but that means that 30%, are not members of Leech Lake. And so what does that mean, and how did that inform the content that he's decided to share, and, making those difficult decisions. So anyways, great questions that you can ask him. I also have the questions that you all brought up from workshop 1 on things that I couldn't answer when I presented that content back in March. And so anyways, it's great to hear from him, and it'll be exciting to hear from you all. I'm really excited that you'll be able to set up kind of a recurring meeting time so you can get together and not feel too overwhelmed once the time with the youth gets rolling. I will send out those Jamboards that we built together over the first 2 workshops. So, when we think back to March, you talked about how you've defined tribal civics as a group, why you think this initiative is important, and what impacts this could have on your nation. And so you brainstormed a lot of really positive ideas. And so I'm grateful that we have that content kind of saved and that you can access that at any time on those Jamboards, because those are yours. And then in workshop 2, of course, you all brainstormed about the target audience, and we reviewed a lot of that content today. So I would encourage you all to utilize those documents when you meet too, just as resources. And if you have something similar set up for your nation, I'm happy to talk with you about how we can kind of export that info and send it in a file that may be easier too, because I know some tribal offices really don't like Google. And so we can definitely work together to make sure you get this information and this content that you've generated. So anyways, all of these ideas that you've generated can support your plan and how your project will look. And again, this will evolve as you receive feedback, especially from the youth. But it's important to just get started. So knowing that who, what, where, when, and how will be kind of the goal for your presentation for our final workshop. So looking at the Nourish Your Mind resources, of course, we do want to send you away with a little bit of homework, but we did keep it light this time since you have your own kind of group project to be working on. But if you could just read pages 25 and 26 in the Tribal Civics Guidebook, and then also, again, working with your team, getting together, going through that presentation plan. You know, if you want time at the end too to get schedules, get Bill coordinating everybody, we're happy to stay on, or Joe and I can kind of let one of you all be the host so you can take over on this meeting. And so with that, as always, we like to end with a quote. This is one from another of our guidebook contributors, Les LaFontaine, and the quote says, "Democracy is something we all need to be involved in. Democracy is something that is embedded in Native societies. We need to understand the concept of democracy from an Indigenous point of view, from a non-human centered point of view, and then help our people understand that." And I think you all spoke to this earlier as well when you talked about the responsibilities of being a citizen. And so I know in a different presentation, Les had said, you know, the Bill of Rights left out something important by saying, you know, Bill of Rights and responsibilities. So as tribal citizens, we do have responsibilities and roles in our community. And how can we elevate that knowledge so that our citizens are engaged and the future leaders that we know those youth especially will be. So with that, does anybody have any final questions or things you wanted to talk about before we end today's workshop?
So you guys are aware of next steps. Bill, you're going to contact everyone, schedule everything with everyone, or who is going to be doing that?
Yeah, I'll do it offline. I'll give some suggestions to all of you. I'll probably send you a little note tonight, but since you got pop-up shop, it won't be tomorrow. Okay.
I'll keep you accountable.
Okay. I'll see. Am I going to see you tomorrow, Cindy, on the NCAI call?
They're talking about canceling it.
Oh, okay. I need to talk to them about one topic, so I'll just work with Darley. So.
All right.
Right. Thank you all so much for participation today. It was a pleasure to be with you and to listen to your great ideas and discussions. Until next time.
Thank you.
Stop.